I have a couple of MRs, or at least one, that I'd like to just whiz through, hopefully, and see if I've missed anything before I pass it over for review. And another one that requires an update to the version of GitLab UI. And the update, the change has been made in GitLab UI, but we need to bump the dependency within GitLab, and I can't remember how to do that, or whether it's an automated process. So hopefully we can find the docs and maybe just touch on that very briefly. So the MR that I'm sure I've borrowed a lot of Marco's time and others on these pairing sessions previously, trying to move forward, is to do with, I'm going to call, writable forks, we're calling them. So the before behavior, and this is going to do my full screen, isn't it? So you're not going to be able to see this. That's annoying. And I don't know how to, can I do that? Will it open it? No, maybe. Yeah, that'll do. So the behavior before my change, when you click on the Web IDE button, if you don't have write access to the project, it tells you don't, and it offers to fork it. And when you click on fork, it then immediately creates a, let's call it a personal or private fork of that project. The new behavior is to, pause. If you've got access to any existing forks, not necessarily personal, it would show personal if you had one. No, it wouldn't. Skip that bit. It shows you, and then you can just click into the fork where you can then access the Web ID from there. And if you do click to create a new fork, so create a new fork, instead of making the assumption that you want to create a personal fork in your personal namespace, it just takes you to the normal new fork page, so you can select the namespace you want to fork into. So I think there's those kind of two key improvements. One is showing you a list of all forks you have access to. The other one is allowing you to choose where you want to fork the project to if you want to create a new fork. There's a couple of things it doesn't do. It only impacts the behavior on like the main landing, like repository route. It doesn't impact the behavior if you're within the, like inside a file inside the repository. And I think there's a few other places that button appears. So we'd like to do that at a later stage. So if you have access, as you can see, well, no, we've got two there, but if you only had access to one fork, it might be nice to automatically go to that fork. But we only do that for personal forks at the moment, so we haven't changed that behavior. And if you have access to personal forks and other forks, it still automatically takes you to your personal fork. So we could also look to improve that behavior as well. But I want to say that these are outside the scope of this initial change. So I hope we're going to be all green. I pushed up the last changes, fixes an hour or two ago, so it's just finishing running the pipeline. And yeah, I just wanted to whiz through the changes. Maybe Marco, like, I don't know if you want me to continue to drive or you flip to your screen for a minute, but it might be helpful, rather than me explaining it all, you like reading through it, and then it gives you a better opportunity to pick it apart or say what you think it's doing and ask the questions, etc. can't hear you. That's
Yeah,
it.
I was trying to activate the mic. So you would like me to basically go to your MR and look at the changes and try to understand what they are doing?
I can either scroll through it if we can't be bothered to flip the screens, and yeah, you can just kind of ask any questions or tell me to stop or rewind or fast forward or whatever. Or if it's easier to do it on your own screen, then yeah, we can do that.
Well, I think it might be easier because I can see where I want to see.
Yep, sounds good.
Can you drop the link to the MR quickly because I don't think.
Absolutely. So pop it in Discord. Thank you for sharing that other link that I hadn't seen yet, so I can start to read that whilst you're reviewing.
Yeah, that's only to show that it's an automated process.
Yeah, I think I'd seen this one because I think there's some stress because it's been open for a while, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
If you want to share your screen and
Yeah.
so Missy, while Marco's getting this up, are you particularly more front end or back end or?
More back end.
Okay, you'll have to forgive us a bit there.
Oh, no worries.
I think there might be a few back end changes part of this MR. So
Yeah, well, technically it's using. No, is it a view application? Oh, let's see.
absolutely.
Okay, and I'm sharing.
Awesome.
Okay, so I think it's best to start in here. Okay, so basically index.js, so it's the file that's mounting the view application for the web ID button.
Yep.
And you are creating a new View Apollo client. Which makes me wonder, maybe it's outside of the scope of this MR, but I recently saw some communication on the front end teams
Yep.
try to avoid creating new clients and try to share clients between view application to reduce the amount of clients alive on a page so that they can also share the same cache. So
Oh, do you know if you got a link, or do you know how it's possible to do that? I think you're right. We might keep it out of scope, but I'm interested to know how.
I don't have the link at hand, but I can find it later on.
Yeah, no. We'll pick up later. Wicked, thank you.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't know if this is one of those cases that you can actually do that, because I don't know if there are any other view application on that page that can be used to share the context.
Yeah, I think there would definitely be other view apps on that page. Well, no, sorry, not on that Hamel page.
Yeah.
But within that, do you know what I mean? If you're looking at the front end, there's definitely tons of view apps.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think on that Hamel page necessarily. So, but yeah, that sounds like something for afterwards. Okay, cool.
Okay.
But yeah, you're spot on. All we're doing there, interestingly, I think this used to have Apollo in it, but it's been removed between when I started working on this MR and today. So yeah, I've just had to re-add the Apollo client, but inject that into the View app in order to do the GraphQL stuff.
Okay, so create the new Apollo provider with the client and provide the project path prop down to the view component and the Apollo provider as well. So nothing big in here.
Yep.
This is the confirm fork model for the web ID. I don't know where this is used. Confirm fork from the web ID link. So the edit action. Mount fork model. Mount fork model is visible if we show web ID button.
This is a really good point, because I might add some comments as you're going, actually, because that's a really interesting one.
Yeah, I kind of understand, because we don't want to show the so we have the web ID link. So let's try to get so that's the web ID button is this
Yeah.
one, and confirm. Oh, that's the model. So no, this will open the web IDE for me, and I don't have a GDK running. So basically, this model is the one that's opening when you click the web ID.
Bingo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't want to show the model if we cannot create a fork.
Yeah, so I've actually not changed the behavior here. I've just moved it. Well, I have very, very subtly, but not really. I've just moved it out to a computed prop, because it's got an and an or in it now. So before, you could see it was already doing a VF with those two conditions.
Yeah, disable fork model is the new one.
Yeah, so that already existed, but it just wasn't being used.
Oh, okay.
Or I don't know how it was being used. So there's a new way. Have you got a repo that you can recreate this behavior on, or not really?
I'm I don't think so, because I have access to the repo now.
Yeah, of course. So essentially now, I'll get my GDK up, and
yeah, maybe the props should be somewhat documented in some cases.
yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a few. These are really good examples of
Disable fork model. Yeah, this basically disables the model itself.
So I think it's going to definitely be best if I show you this. I'm just recreating something to share my screen so you can see it. Essentially, it looks like the fork modal might be being done away with.
Okay.
So let me go back, turn the camera off for a second, and just flip myself onto here. So on here we get the modal. If I go
sharing, oh yeah, you're sharing.
If I go into a file and open in the web ID, I no longer get a modal. I now get this kind of context bar thing. So that's what the disable modal prop is, I think. I think it's where they started to implement this new thing.
Did you try to see the blame on that prop and see when it was introduced?
I did not. Let me flip back to you, and I'll do that while you're continuing to.
Yeah, I'm just out of curiosity.
Absolutely.
Okay, so did we switch back? Yes. So yeah, this is just tweaking the condition to show the model.
Yeah, so more specifically, it's mounting the modal, not showing the modal. So the problem was that we were mounting the modal unnecessarily. It wasn't being shown, but it was just being mounted.
Okay.
And
even if the model was disabled, it was still mounted. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And then just some refactoring here, so nothing big. The model itself has some messages tweaked, because fork project became create a new fork. You can't edit further there. You can't edit further in this project. Switch. Oh, because there's two different messages now. One to switch to one of the existing forks, and one message instead to create a fork.
Absolutely.
Okay, inject project path with the default to empty is the prop that it's getting injected from the index.js that we saw before.
Yep.
Data. Okay, here we're calling the Apollo query to get the list of forks that the current user has access to.
Yep.
Computer props to know when the query is running and when we don't have access to any fork. And this is just showing the different messages for the different situations, or the loading icon while the query is loading. So nothing big in here.
Pretty much.
Okay. And this is it for the front end, basically, because 3 helper.
Yeah, until we come to the fun specs. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so fork up helpers, three helper. This is used to get the path to the fork.
Not quite.
Misleading.
This one.
Isn't this creating the URL to basically go to the new fork page?
To create a new fork. So it's
Right.
not going to a fork, it's kind of going to the create a new fork page.
Yes.
Yeah.
And before it was using the fork path that's coming from, I don't know, from up there. Fork and edit, either fork and edit. So this is now unified.
Yeah, it used to try and go a few steps ahead. So it used to, right, you click on the button, it immediately forks it to your personal namespace and then goes to the web IDE or
Okay.
the edit. But I said no, let's take it easy.
Yeah.
Let's go to the new fork page. They can make some decisions. They can decide where to create the new fork, and then find the file and decide about editing it in the web IDE, etc.
Yes, and I completely agree, because if we don't want to create the fork on our personal namespace, we can't undo that right away. We have to remove the project and all that stuff. So okay, this makes sense. And okay, this is basically related to this one, because we
Yep.
don't have a reference path anymore. So this fixes that, and the translation files got updated. And this
So this actually started on a front end pairing session quite some months ago, and Paul on the front end team essentially suggested moving the file because it does only relate. It's only used for the web IDE, so it made more sense to live in there rather than.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's here. It's a completely new file, but it got moved, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Some fixtures to provide, I guess, some writable forks.
Yeah.
Basically set up a bunch of stuff so that we can test the various scenarios.
Yeah, this just generates the mock data as we would have done in the old days by hand, but this kind of generates them as fixtures. So
Okay, so this creates a GraphQL response for a user that has no access to a writable fork.
bingo.
And this instead creates a GraphQL response for a user that has access to a couple of forks. Okay.
Yeah. Sounds like I've made it reasonably self-explanatory so far. That's a good start. Although you have a lot of context, so to be fair, don't you? So
yeah. Okay, no, let's go this. And I thought this would be easier. Uh, Describe the fork model options for. Oh, that's the function that got tweaked on tree helper to avoid doing that bunch of stuff automatically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's setting up a repository and okay. Stop being a bunch of data returns. Okay, just making sure that the path return is correct. And
So again, just to give you a tiny bit of context, and I'll add that comment now. There was no test coverage for what I could see for this helper method.
okay,
So I've both added the test as well as obviously made it test the new function. You know where you looked at that change that I made to the helper. So I'll just put a comment. So I think this test coverage was missing before.
okay, yeah, because show edit. Oh yeah, it's stopping these functions to make sure the fork model ID is the right one. Because the path will be the same on both situations, but the fork model ID will be different. And this is making sure of that because fork path here and here is the same, but the fork model ID is different. Okay.
Bingo. And if there was a previous test, I would have been able to. It would have shown that it should be different to what it would have been before. But
Yeah.
there wasn't. There wasn't one. So, or not
Yeah.
that I could find anyway.
And now we go to the front end specs, the ones that I love the most.
Hopefully, there's not massive changes here. So I would
Uh,
probably you can look at all the import changes if you want, but I'd probably kind of mainly focus on the actual spec itself and what it looks like I've changed, if that makes sense.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I got a little bit confused because the response is important up here and the query.
ESLint being a pain in my backside.
Yeah. No, it's not an issue. Okay. It's setting up view Apollo. Why are you setting up the view Apollo client only? Oh, there's a create component inside of this section. Okay, Flick Apollo, it's stopping that.
Again, I'm going to add a comment, although I'm worried about getting crucified for it. But so the web ID link spec is
Okay.
doing a full fat mount of the web ID link,
Okay.
which means it's mounting confirm for modal as well.
Okay.
And therefore it needs the Apollo client.
Okay.
Somebody might say, can't you change it to a shallow mount and do X, Y, and Z? But I want to say that that's outside the scope. I just want to make sure this test.
Well, by default, this is shallow.
By default, it does, but in at least one test scenario, it does a full fat mount. So.
Okay. So here you're just providing the query and the response, and that's why. Okay, because these specs don't have nothing to do with the different scenarios about you have access to one or more forks or you don't have access to any.
Yeah.
And that's why you are basically providing only the writable forks response and not differentiating.
Yeah.
That. Okay, so this makes sense. And here we have a bunch more stuff. Okay, so setting up Apollo and the. Okay, you do it this way. Okay, makes sense. So you have the variable storing the response that you want to mock from Apollo, and you mock the query result with that value. Okay.
I think I've spotted a bug actually when you've said that. Because that's global, we need to I should either pass that in, shouldn't I, or I should reset it on a before each or an after each.
I usually provide the full mock result because I can also test for the rejector for our rejection if there's an exception somewhere, or I don't know.
So I should pass that into the create component.
Yeah, I think that's a bit safer.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
Okay. So it's passing the fake Apollo provider to the component, and okay, this is testing for the two different scenarios. I think that's perfectly fine, apart from this one, but
Okay, let's pass this into create component instead of a global. This could leak.
I don't know if maybe it's already there. Is it also testing to see if the loading icon is visible while the Apollo query is running?
Good question. No, I'm not. Was that just trying to remember if I added that behavior? I think
Oh yeah, you did.
I did. Yeah. So a good spot. Thank you.
So that one, and what happens when there's an error on the query itself?
Good question. So we should test the loading state and error too. Cool. I'll add those. Thank you very much.
And that's it. I don't see any other changes. So
Amazing. And I think you've answered my other, but I think it's worth us sharing for the video. Shall I?
Oh yeah.
Back. OBS. Get rid of me. So yeah, thanks for sharing this. So yeah, it looks like I don't quite know how or when or why, but yeah, it looks like the dependency bot automatically creates these MRs. Yeah, what I'm unsure about is why it went from 62 12 0 to 64 1 1.
It gets updated. I mean, if the dependency bot creates an MR today, let's say for version 63, and the MR is not merged, but tomorrow a new version comes out, the dependency bot updates directly to 64 instead of 63.
Yeah, but then if you look at GitLab UI, they've been, we're on 64.2.3 now.
22 hours ago, and the last change
3 days. And I wonder, like, if there's a way, I don't know if you can do something. Do you think this? There you go. Wow, that's self-explanatory, isn't it? Yeah, because otherwise it looked like there was some work that was required. I mean, significant amount of work that was required to because of changes to the library. And if it kept merging in more changes, it would have been impossible to kind of finish this MR. So awesome. Well, hopefully you learned something as well as me today, Mark.
Yeah, I knew there was a way. I didn't remember what.
So, and then we suspect that once this gets merged in, a new MR will be created fairly soon after, which will then bump from 64.1.1 to whatever the latest.
Yeah, did you check the comments to see how far are they from merging?
Weirdly, I've been following this, but I don't remember exactly why or how I ended up getting pinged on it. I think it's close. done some testing? What's expected? Are you available to approve and merge this? So yeah, hopefully today, tomorrow, next couple of days, it'll get merged.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to avoid what I was tempted to do is bump it myself in an MR.
No.
Well, no, to then make the changes, because you know where we got to with.
So you can make the changes while you are waiting and then undo the bump, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think I'm just going to hold fire for a minute.
Yeah, I think the issue would be that if you do the bump, you also have to apply all the changes that are coming from this MR.
Well, I wouldn't. That's the thing. Like, I'm not interested in all the regressions and the changes and other bits and pieces. I just want to, do you know what I mean? I just want to see my changes from GitLab UI to be able to make my changes in GitLab.
Yeah, but are these changes only regarding the specs, or is something broken on the UI? Because otherwise, Webpack is going to complain.
There's a few little changes, but yeah, good point. I don't know, but I'm just going to hold fire, I think, and just hoping that it's going to be merged in a day or two.
I'm pretty sure you're going to find something to do for the next.
Exactly. Yeah, awesome, cool. So in which case, yeah, should we try and find an issue for you, Missy, or have you got a short list, or?
Yeah, that could work. I have another issue that I started a bit of work on and just researched, but I don't have an MR up yet because it is rather front-end heavy. So maybe you guys would be the best to ask for some direction on how to get started.
Absolutely. Do you want to ping us the issue? I'll open it up and we can talk about it, or do you want to share your screen, or?
Yeah, let me go find the link and then I'll ping it to you.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for joining, by the way. We've been having these sessions for a long time and not doing a brilliant job of kind of publicizing them. So it's hopefully you saw it on Meetup, right?
Yeah, this was really helpful because I know you guys do the pairing sessions and I know it's like generally a Tuesday at some point, but then I'm always like busy or forget something. And so having it actually on my calendar helped a lot.
We're also like, hopefully I'll be good and create. I've got to find out if on Meetup we can do a recurring one. I'm not sure if we can, but if at least each week I create the following. But we're always open to, if you wanted ad hoc session, like at some point, a different time that suits better, or day or whatever, then just let us know.
Oh, thank you. All right, I just pinged in Discord the link. I had tried to ping someone with some questions at the end, but didn't get a response yet. So maybe we can look into those questions. And in the meantime, I had been digging a bit more myself, so I can ping this as well. Let me just find this link. Okay, so basically, I had previously implemented the group releases filter in the GraphQL API. So now we need to migrate to actually use it on the front end.
Right.
And that's what this issue is about. And so I was digging around trying to figure out where that is actually implemented so that I can update to use the GraphQL API. And the second link I sent, I think this might be related to where it's actually implemented. This looks like the filtered search drop-down menu, and this is where you can select the release. So I'm not sure if this is connected. This is kind of where I left off in my digging.
Okay, so let me just check, because I'm probably completely, how big the product is, and I might be. Is this to do with this, the search issue search?
Exactly. So if you go to merge requests instead of issues, it's the merge requests one.
Damn, we're still in Haml, aren't we? We're still in Haml for this. Okay. Yeah. So and so you can do release.
Release. Yeah.
Yeah. And So what was, you said you made a GraphQL. Is it to populate this list basically?
It's to actually populate the results.
Right. So the problem is that the results aren't using GraphQL at the moment.
Yeah.
Now I imagine changing that to use, and is it a view app, etc. I feel like that is a huge amount of work, but I could be wrong.
I'm afraid that would mean basically redoing that page in a view application.
So what we could try and do, I'm probably not going to be able to, but I could try and is find the issue list app. So really funny that you should bring this to the table, because I don't know how much detail I mentioned, but this MR that me and Marco were just talking about briefly, that's relying on the change to GitLab UI, is, I'll show you the video, is to add some additional filters on the issues list search. To search on created date and closed date, but I was very fortunate that this is all already Vue, and it was already using GraphQL API, etc. So the changes I needed to make were a little bit simpler, although Marco will tell you how fun this was trying to get a date picker into the search. But so I happen to know that the issues list is all a Vue app. But the merge request one is still on Haml at the moment. So we could try and find when this was created, so a couple of years ago, we could try and find the relevant MR and kind of try and get a bit more context. But I suspect, could be completely wrong, that there were probably feature flags involved, and someone probably started in parallel to build a Vue version of the issue. Of the issues list. So if we're going to attempt this for merge requests, or maybe somebody's already looking at it, we could ping the relevant product managers and engineering managers to find out. But that is probably like quite a big thing that needs to start behind a feature flag. So you start building this view in parallel, and then once it gets to a state where it sort of matches and mimics the functionality, then we can sort of enable the feature flag and start to remove the old Haml version.
Okay, when I read through the issue itself, it has a weight of 1.
Okay, so let's go back and see what I'm missing. Let's see what I'm missing.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's something simpler of just like literally where the API is called to get the list, and then it's populated elsewhere.
Yeah, it might be just to populate the drop down. Let's have a look. There's not much context here, is there?
Releases filter.
Yeah, okay. So on merge requests, currently it uses, I think it's to populate the drop down. So let's have a look.
That would be.
So
that could totally be, and I misinterpreted.
It's interesting though, because this also says we have the MR releases filter on the group level, but I'm seeing it on the project level as well. I don't think it means anything. I don't think it matters, but
maybe that got added in.
Since
that issue is 1 year old,
so that issue may not even. Well, I don't know. From what you're saying, so you've built the GraphQL endpoint, did you, Missy, to be able to actually get that data?
Yeah, so I just pinged it in Discord, that MR, and that was just grabbing, when I would test in like graphical, it's grabbing all of the releases.
Awesome. Yeah, okay.
It could be, because this issue was also rather old when I had worked on it, so maybe this is irrelevant now. I'm not sure what the context is.
We'll see if we can figure out. So if we go release equals, right, so that is calling, that's an internal API. Controller API. So I think we're on to a winner. I want to see if we do it at the project level, if it calls that same internal same internal API or whether it's using.
I'll be ready.
It might be that this one has already been updated.
I know that the project and the groups are quite similar, so it could.
No, this one's still they're using that internal API as well.
Internal as well,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. So this is good because it means it's a definitely much simpler than rewriting the entire
view.
thing.
Okay.
So yeah, awesome. So yeah, let's see if we can just give you a few pointers. So I think you were right. I think you found, so this is where a view app is being mounted.
Okay.
The drop down for the releases. So if we search, and forgive me, like I may be sort of really teaching you stuff that is really already obvious and you already know, but I'll just sort of walk through my process and maybe see, like, yeah. So
that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is what I would normally. So we kind of know that it ends up here, and we want to kind of see how that gets injected, if that's the right term. So again, from an architecture point of view, you probably already know that we've got this Ruby backend that serves content, and then JavaScript then injects like view apps in various places. So this selector is how our drop down is going to be injected. Our view component is going to be injected. I think. It might not be, but we'll find out in a second. So yeah, it's basically saying that the release token component is being injected wherever this JS dropdown release is, and then this is what you pointed me to, which is where it actually is.
So back in that other file you were just looking at, does that mean that for the online 112 get releases endpoint, that method get releases endpoint, could that potentially be where it's pulling the information? That's what needs to be updated?
Yes, I think it is. So I'm not familiar with this. So what's good is that we've got a get labels one as well, and I suspect that is using GraphQL, and if that is, then it means we've got like a something to compare it to. So
that's exactly what I was looking for, some kind of pattern that already existed.
Damn. It's not. It's using our old school API as well. Let's see if there's any others. Okay, so draft is approved confidential branch. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if that will use in legacy, but we'll find out, I guess. Target branch. Yeah, they're all using old. I don't know if there'd be a simple way of me finding. Mappings. So author. What about author? Surely that's not, but maybe it is. No, they're all using old internal APIs. So yeah, this is really interesting because I don't think so. It's not mounting view components. Let me just get rid of. So I'm really curious what it's actually. So it's finding this element, and this is an unordered list using an old drop down. So what I don't know is whether I think we can simply grab the data from GraphQL, but I'm interested to know, like, almost whether we should be replacing the HAML with a view component, and whether you can even do it at that low, like just one piece at a time, or whether that will all be done as one big one big kind of piece of work. So let's just see, because if we can see what how this is interpreted. My worry is that, well, yeah, it must know drop downs, duplicate, label processing, releases. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is what's telling it how to process the response from the API.
Mm-hmm.
We might be able to do that. What
I don't know if you already thought about this, but
go on.
if we just call the GraphQL endpoint and get the values from that instead of the REST API.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we want to do.
Yeah.
But it's understanding the behavior of this. I suspect it's kind of coded to call it probably can't even handle GraphQL endpoints at the moment. So how on earth do we get to a point where yeah, I kind of want to drop down on user. So probably need to look at.
Oh, it's making an Ajax.
Exactly. So yeah, there's some questions that I think we'll need to ask.
So it's more than just updating where it gets called. You'd have to redo the whole framework of how it actually calls things because it doesn't support GraphQL at all.
I think so. Yeah. So again, it's the decision making that always stumps, like gets me, if you know what I mean. Because I could certainly do this, but it's like, well, are we better to add GraphQL support to this within this kind of JavaScript helper, whatever you want to call it, or should we create another JavaScript helper that's specifically meant for, working with GraphQL? Or should we just convert it into a view component? Or there's a bunch of different avenues. Have you, Marco, got some immediate sort of?
I'm interested in to go back to the drop-down non-user. Yeah, that config. Where is it used?
So not
there. Oh, that drop lab. I don't know if you remember from 2 weeks ago. So config. It's.
I feel like the
Set the
simplest solution would be to modify this to be able to handle GraphQL.
Yeah, because the main thing is that we have to call the GraphQL endpoint and pass the GraphQL query as data.
Yeah.
That set data method, is it defined somewhere?
So which bit? Sorry, the
up above on the config, it's passing method set data. I don't know if that's the method to call to set the data for the Ajax call.
I wonder if it's like setting data in here somehow, some way. But yeah, if we could, so we're passing in an end point. If we could add something else that you could pass in here.
The only issue that config is getting passed to the drop lab, and I'll try to see if there's some documentation on that drop lab stuff.
So you think drop lab itself is pre-processing? Yeah, so So yeah, you mean DropLab has actually got code within it
Yeah.
that handles. Yeah. Okay. I feel like we should be able to pass it data rather than passing an endpoint, maybe. So where was DropLab coming from?
What does the drop lab do again?
That's a good question.
So have you? Where does it? Does it come from? It's not GitLab UI, is it, Marco?
No, I don't think so. That must be an outside dependency. Oh, be right back.
Yeah, where's that? This.DropLab. So it gets passed in. But we don't pass in.
So try and check inside the package.json if there's a dependency to DropLab or something like that.
Look like it. Trying to figure out. So drop down on user extends filtered search drop down. Filtered search drop down then defines DropLab, but it's supposedly passed in.
Yeah.
So where we?
Oh.
Did you see something that I missed?
Extra arguments, endpoint symbols. Yeah, but it's not passing DropLab.
No, that's these like extra arguments. So I think somewhere in here there must be something I would have thought that iterates for all of these and knows.
Maybe not in here, but somewhere else. This is available drop-down mappings.
Maybe even
Yeah.
What actually news up an instance of?
I think that's if you go down to where all the tokens are declared.
Yeah.
It's passing that GL column name of the class. So I think that's what using it to build mappings. Okay. Oh,
I'm trying to work out what calls this and then loops through them to then create the components.
yeah. I think this is the usual rabbit hole.
Okay, so it looks like this mounts or loads available drop-down mappings.
Okay.
What does it do with them?
Gets allowed mappings.
There'll be something in here that kind of loops through them. Load drop down. Is this what we're looking for? Haha.
New DropLab.
Oh. Right, news up.
So there's a DropLab.
News up a drop down, DropLab, and then somewhere I'm hoping in here it's gonna match it to.
I think that's inside the load function.
But drop lab deprecated.
Nice.
This library. View component. Okay, and there's the documentation. And we'll see if there's any mention of GraphQL. No mention of GraphQL. But then it doesn't talk about API much, and I'd expect it to.
That method, that's.
Expect it to talk more about, how it works, and that you can pass it an endpoint, and it will grab data from that endpoint, and it will use the preprocessor logic to process that data, etc. But plugins.
I think there's an Ajax plugin. Oh, Droplab Ajax. So that's. Oh, maybe that's a built-in plugin. Ajax plugin.
So would we need like a GraphQL plugin?
Yeah, but I feel like because the droplab is deprecated, that probably this isn't the like. There'll be one. Somebody might say, "Don't." There's no point in that. There's a blocker. That there's no point in starting work on it. Like this will come as part of the migration of the merge request page to Vue.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might be possible, but I'm not sure whether it would or would be worthwhile because it might become redundant, and creating a small Vue component that gets mounted.
I don't think that's possible.
I think I feel like it's definitely possible. If I close that's not what I wanted. We had a HAML file open somewhere. This one. So instead of this is using HAML to render the drop down. If we were to mount a Vue component here instead, that might be that's something that's then reusable, but I don't really know. It baffles me that we were able to do something as complex as this search bar in HAML. It's pretty crazy what it's capable of doing and how it works, and to have built this in HAML, I think is quite a feat. But maybe that's just because I'm much more comfortable in JavaScript and Vue than I am in Ruby and HAML.
Okay, so basically I need to ask what's worth working
Yeah,
on for this.
let's sort of. I think it'd be really good to recap on the issue with what you've found out. That it's like, okay, well, I found out that this is mounted here, and that it's these things that it's using droplab, and this is where it calls the endpoint to get the data. The problem is we can't just update that call because it's the droplab component is Ajax has got an Ajax plugin and it can get it from a REST API call, but it can't. It's not built to handle GraphQL. Droplab's deprecated, and it probably doesn't make sense to extend it or to create a plugin to be able to get the data from GraphQL. So, do we create a Vue component and mount that Vue component here instead? or is that not possible or not worthwhile? And do we need to wait for the page to be rewritten, the merge request app, as I'm going to call it, to be rewritten in Vue? And I might be able to answer a question. Let me just change my sharing quickly.
Well, this might just be the start of the migration to the
absolutely, that might be a possibility. I've asked the question recently about the migration plans. I think it would have been in the source code channel on Slack. So I'm just going to try and find.
Oh, Droplab is actually a package on GitLab.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I asked the question. They're not in Vue. I'm sure I asked the question. I'm going to share something in just a minute. Which foundations create code review? Maybe I didn't get that far then. Okay, let me reshare. I got linked to this. So this doesn't look like exactly an epic tracking the migration of. This is a bit more specific. I was hoping for an epic about kind of migrating the merge request list to Vue. Don't think this is it. But interestingly, it found that issue that I was. Yeah. Progress. This information with rough indicators. I didn't even mention Hamel there, so. Let's just ping the relevant. So get the product on that issue. Source code. So I think it will be like Torsten and probably Andre that we want to tag as like the sort of from the product team to sort of say, is there a plan as the work started to migrate it to Vue? And that'll probably be the right people to also answer the questions about, should we modify Droplab to handle GraphQL, or should we create a Vue component that we mount instead, or is this really no point in trying to do this until the merge request list has been migrated to Vue? And in which case, when's that going to happen? Has it started, etc.?
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you
Yeah,
so
well,
much.
it doesn't, because obviously it's something that you were maybe hoping to be quite straightforward. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but hopefully some answers from the people who are a bit closer to it than me and Marco might be able to relieve you and sort of say, actually, it's not as bad as you might have thought. We'll see.
Yeah. Great. No, it's good to hear that. I was diving down these rabbit holes trying to figure things out, and I thought there must have been something simple that I was just missing, but it's good to hear from other
Cool.
people that
And
they're also
hopefully
just as confused.
you might find exactly. Hopefully you might find another issue that's a little bit more. It's always nice to have quick wins that make you feel like you're making progress, right? When you have
True.
these big ones that go round and round. So thanks very much for joining us, and maybe catch you next week or sometime later in the month.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Enjoy your food, Marco.
You.
See you later.